I just created this model based on a Too Tall Toby challenge, and I was applying the colors, and it gave me an interesting scenario that I thought would make a good opportunity to talk about um, applying appearances and just some other stuff that comes up. So, if you've seen any of my other Too Tall Toby videos, you'll notice that my parts usually look very similar to the parts on the drawing. So I do use a um, color picker, try to get a RGB value. And then in appearances, it's right here. But I will come down and I will create a new um, color. And actually, I'm going to give this one a name, medium blue. And just underscore, Creo doesn't like spaces. Um, and I give it the updated RGB value. Based on a spot on the part. Okay. Right, and then if you say close, and to apply it to the entire part, I just click on the part name up here at the top, and then middle click to click the OK button from the pop-up. So when you apply to entire part, you're not only changing the outside, but also the inside. Essentially, if I were to 3D print this, the filament is the entire, all the way through. If it was injection molded, it's just the entire part is blue through and through. Okay. Now you'll notice this one has a yellow geometry here. So I'll just go in and grab the yellow, although don't forget that you can search and you'll see that there's several different types of yellow. So with the paintbrush here, I can click on a surface, and like many other times in Creo, highlighting a cylinder only gets half the side. If you middle click, it will give you the entire cylinder. But also pay attention that when you're in Creo and you're selecting appearances, that if you just keep clicking, you are toggling. So if you need multiple, I'm going to clear that one. So there's a clear appearances paintbrush as well. If you want multiple, you do have to hold down Control. Okay. So I want to get the inside of this hole, and oh, 1 second. Give away the ending here a little bit. And when you select the inside of the hole, you get more than I'm really looking for. And that's because they're the same surface, they're continuous surface. In a previous life, I might have made an extrude of 0.001 just to give it a little bit different thickness and apply a color to that one. It does work, but let's instead go in here to this in our editing portion. There's an option called separate surface region. So the image does a pretty good job in this icon demonstrating what's happening here, but we can work with independent surfaces now. So I can click on that surface. I'm going to auto detect that. It's going to separate them automatically. Okay, got rid of the color, but I can apply an appearance just to the center now. Okay. So that's exactly what we're looking for. I'm going to hit save. Okay, and that's what the part looks like. So that's great. With this part, though, I'll mention a couple of other tricks. Let's say I wanted the top, I want to do the same thing. I want to split this surface so I can get different colors. Let's say I want to make the top red. Okay. So again, when you're applying an appearance, you have to hold down Control. But there are a couple of other options. You can do a selection with either the fully, everything it passes select box, or you can do the everything that is fully enclosed select box, or you can do intent surfaces. So the surfaces associated with certain features can be selected. That can be really helpful if you've got a complicated feature that you can use the intent surface from a feature. Okay. So anyway, I've got my surfaces selected and I'm going to middle click and they all turn red. Okay. In this case, what I wanted was just the top portion. I didn't want this surface around the outside. So because it's a cylinder, it's all kind of pulled together here. A couple of ways we can handle this, but let's take a look at this option called intersect. So I'm going to create an intersect between this surface and this surface. The third thing is going to be the top plane. So we're going to get a little curve. You see it there in orange, going between the surfaces here. Okay. So unfortunately, the way that there is an option called divide surface. And what we can do is take this surface, right? And we can divide it based on this chain, which we created from the intersection. There we go. You can see it shows up with a label as the curve that came from the intersect. Okay. And when you hit OK, it doesn't, well, you can see it split it, but it just put the top half onto the other cylinder. Honestly, I'm not sure why Creo treats cylinders as two separate halves. I find it to be way more frustrating than helpful. There's got to be a good reason though. But if I go in and I divide again and I select the surface and the chain of the intersection, okay, now this is a separate geometry. Okay. And I could go in and I could, or honestly, I don't want to paint that. I kind of want to clear that. There we go. So it's the same as the part. But then I can add the red onto, there we go, that top portion. Okay. So there is this option called divide surface that can help if you've got other geometry that's not already broken up. That's another way to do it. These are all paintings. It is still blue on the inside. If I go in and I drop even if I add a round onto here, it'll show blue because that is the material on the inside. And I essentially think of this as just being painted on the outside, and I scraped away the paint and it's still blue on the inside. If I want the whole thing, the top, to be a separate color, then I would treat that as a separate body. So in that case, I would go into the body tool, and I would split the body. So I would take the entire body, I would split it at the top plane. Or if I don't have a top plane, actually, I can just select the surface. Okay. All right, so now I've got this whole body split in half. Okay. And let's see here. I should be able to go in. Let's do clear all. Okay. And make blue apply to body 2. And red apply to body 1. Okay. And now if I go in and I add another round or any other feature, so I'm kind of getting rid of a little bit of material, it's still red on the inside. So the entire top material is red through and through. Essentially, if you think of 3D printing, I started printing in blue, and then I did a filament change, and now everything else on the way up is red. So those are my tricks and things to think about when it comes to applying appearances to parts in Creo. When you get into applying appearances to assemblies, just keep in mind that what you're doing at the assembly level. So if I were to take this part into an assembly and in the assembly, I applied a different color. Actually, you know what? Let's do it. Let's just throw a real quick assembly here. And let's assemble from session. There we go. All right, there's my part. And if I go into view, appearances, and I apply yellow, let's see here. Let's do this one with the, okay. There we go. We got some surfaces we're applying it to. Okay, so it looks yellow at the bottom. I've applied a color. I can save this. But when I go back to the part is still blue because anything we do at the assembly, we're assuming that the part was done and then shipped, and then at the assembly level, the paint was applied. Okay. Well, have fun with appearances. Creo does have some nice rendering options. That's not really a render there, but the render studio that's built in does have a nice interface and works pretty well. So enjoy playing around with those appearances.